Hey, Lakmini, thank you for coming in to share your experiences, your wisdom, and all of the things you do to our global audience. You just have such a remarkable background as an entrepreneur and having impact within your community across so many different dimensions. And again, congratulations on the many awards you've won and continue to win, and so on, and driving these companies to be globally recognized companies as well. It's just remarkable. So thank you for sharing experiences today with our audience.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for having me. And thank you for those kind words. It means a lot coming from you. Thank you.
So Lakmini, my audience consists of CEOs and investors and scientists and engineers. And so it's quite broad. Though when I post my interviews and I actually track who's watching them, or when I write Forbes articles where I have the interviews embedded, I find that it's a lot of board members, CEOs, founders of companies and things like that, but it's really quite broad. But a question I always get from my audience is, what were those special moments in your life that made you this wonderful person that you are today? Maybe it's 2 or 3 inflection points. And it could be when you were like 5 or 6. There is no age sort of period. It could be any time in your life. What were those magic moments for you?
It's quite interesting, Stephen, because as a child, I don't think I had a clarity, that I would be exactly this. I was just a curious child, I guess, just roaming around, so to say. I love maths. That was something. And then that drove me to engineering. And so I studied in Imperial College in London, and I came back to Sri Lanka, where I live, Colombo. And again, curiosity has driven all my milestones, really. And somehow I just wanted freedom, I felt, we could do something impactful. I didn't really know what the impact would be or what it would be. I'm still searching, in a sense, because as you know, we're never happy, right? We're never satisfied with what we do. We keep moving the milestone or moving that bar. So after I came back from studying engineering, what happened is I sort of stumbled upon software, because I studied hardware. I studied making chips and stuff like that. And the software just liberated me, in a sense, because you could pretty much like do any solution to a problem. I mean, vast amounts of things, and you could do it from Sri Lanka, because all you need is like internet and access. So that was quite liberating. And then from a milestone point of view, when I started the company, it's really evolution. So BoardPAC, which is going really well right now, wasn't what I started with. I started with Boston-based stock exchange related SaaS products right at the beginning in my parents' garage. That didn't go too well right at the beginning, because there was a massive .com crash during that time. And I learned it the hard way, so to say. So we kept on scrambling again and again, and came across BoardPAC. So subsequently, when it came to BoardPAC, really right now, we're covering like 40 countries, many Forbes companies, and their boards using BoardPAC, which is, quite interesting and quite rewarding for us. But the path has been quite grueling up to this stage, and really quite happy with what we've done so far with BoardPAC. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. And I'm going to go back to some of the things you said. So I'm hearing that you were good in math. You love math. And so that means that would draw you to things like the sciences and so on.
Yeah.
And because of your interest in math and your gift for math, you then got into engineering, and you studied at Imperial College in London, which is quite a famous college.
Yes.
One of the top in the world. So what was that experience like, getting into Imperial College and being there? And you're from Sri Lanka, and that's like the heart of Europe in a sense, Imperial College. So What was that? Was it shocking for you or not? That experience, if we can describe that.
So during my time of when I was studying in Imperial, even at that time, I did have a clear picture that I would be an entrepreneur. So again, it was curiosity. Suddenly, culturally, I started meeting so many people with so many different views, different backgrounds. That was quite absorbing because, being an island nation in Sri Lanka, we all, so I thought like all of us sort of thought alike a little. And it was quite shocking for me. And it's great because it took away my fear of, different people. And that's really helped me now because it's really a good global village, isn't it? And we have to work with all sorts of people. And that experience during Imperial, and I mean, at Imperial, there were so many smart people. So that also raised the bar, really. There were so many people from Europe who had come in my class. I mean, I would really call them geniuses, really. I mean, I had never met such people before. So it was, I mean, sort of a culture shock for me, but also a really good one because it set the stage for me to really not fear anybody or anyone from any place. Just sort of made me confident. I hope that answers.
Yeah. I find that really fascinating. So you come from an island nation where there's somewhat sort of homogeneity in the thinking.
Yes. Yes.
And you go to one of the best schools in the world, and there's people from everywhere there.
Yes.
And that really opens you up into this diversity of thinking and points of view, and from what I'm hearing, respecting all the different alternate points of view, and you grew from that because it was different from what you experienced from Sri Lanka to when you went to Imperial College, and that helped you in your journey. But you're saying that even at that time, you were entrepreneur oriented, you were curious, asking questions, and that was the root of what you're doing. You mentioned that you studied chip technology then, or something like that.
Yes. So actually, in my bachelor's, my project for the bachelor's was to design a chip, silicon chip. So the university had all the facilities, and that was interesting. I mean, I could not use it in real life in Colombo after that, but knowing that, I mean, it's quite liberating, understanding everything down to the granular level. So you kind of nothing really shocks you. And something I'd like to also mention, Stephen, is throughout my studies, of course, being a girl in the class, there were, I mean, out of like 100 people, students in the class, there was like less than 5 to 5. I remember there was 10 to begin with. By the second year, it was like 5 girls. I always thought that girls just didn't like doing engineering. I didn't. I mean, that was my thing because I liked it, and even in my school, there was hardly any girls who really wanted to do maths for some reason. I didn't know why. But now that I'm an entrepreneur, I hear this a lot, and we're trying to advocate girls to be in math. And the social conditions of the whole thing. But I honestly, I didn't think anything of it. I would put my hand up. I didn't think that there was a difference being a boy or a girl in my class. And it's kind of, I don't know. I mean, throughout my entrepreneurship time, apart from socially being sort of told that girls had this handicap, I haven't faced it. I mean, it's kind of a unusual situation. I never knew. And I'm just.
So I find that fascinating. So you go to Imperial College. Your final project was to create a chip, which you did, and you found yourself in a community of, let's say, 5 females out of a class of over, let's say, 100 students. So
Yes, to begin with, yeah.
Yeah, and then in your journey in Sri Lanka, you found that as a girl, you were in the minority. always, but you never found that to be an impediment, or but you realize now, because you're being out there, you're working, you founded these companies and so on, that there could be certain conditions that are creating that, and you're trying to address it to help support young people of very diverse backgrounds to come in and not just be sort of male centric. So that's interesting. Those lessons you're now applying in your life, and you took engineering and you got into hardware. So was that electrical engineering or something like that?
So my initial bachelor's was electronic engineering with computer science, because I wanted to learn computer, but there wasn't a computer engineering subject exactly where I wanted to be in London. So it had to be electronic engineering with computer science, and then went on to communication and signal processing, which was more telco.
Right.
I was kind of struggling to find the subjects because I also was trying to figure out what I wanted. So I thought maybe telco, because internet, telco, all that was happening. But anyway, I ended up in software.
That's fascinating. So electronic engineering to telecommunications, and then also computer science. So you've got a great interdisciplinary background in essence. So you can see this entire spectrum. So you graduate from Imperial College, and then what happened next in your journey? You're thinking, oh, I'm going to start a company, or oh, I'm going to work for a company, or what was that like?
So I came back to Colombo, Sri Lanka. Within a week of me coming back, I got bored. I thought I'm going to spend about a month of, finally relaxing a little. I think I cannot relax. There's some problem maybe inherently. So within a week, there was a very interesting job, a company that was forming that I got to know about. There was a satellite company, a company that wanted to put up satellites to give internet to all of Sri Lanka. Of course, it's a bad idea now. The cost of satellite is so expensive. Sri Lanka cannot afford satellite, in the rural districts. But it seemed like a great dream. The chairman of the company had this dream, and I was like the first employee. Actually, it was a startup, so I got to know what a startup was like. Did that for about 2 years, obviously because of the satellite and the cost. It didn't really take off to the ultimate level that we wanted to. And then I moved over to telco, which was my curiosity to begin with. And there was a Bell Canada related partnership called Lanka Bell at the time. So I joined it because they needed, again, I was still in hardware at the time. They needed someone to look after the large hardware and look after the systems. So it was quite unusual that a girl would be doing this job. I still remember walking into the interview, Stephen. I had not seen such large servers. I had worked on, standard size servers in my previous startup company. So I walked into this room. They had the interview inside the server room. It was so cold, I still remember. Two gentlemen, actually they were Canadian, both of them, because the Bell Canada people were leaving and giving us the jobs, the locals. I think I did pretty well. And I was like looking at those servers, they were like cupboards. I was thinking, can I do this? And I thought, if they believe in me, surely I should be able to do it. And that's kind of my motto. If somebody believes in me, who understands what they're tasking me, even if I don't know exactly how to do it, I'm thinking if they believe it, why should I doubt it? That's kind of like a motto that I have and generally has worked for me. So yeah, so that's what happened to me after I got back.
Well, that's interesting. So you get into a satellite company. It's a startup. You were the first hire,
Yes.
and because I'm an investor, so I understand what that. And I've started companies too, right? Or started social enterprises with companies. So I understand what you're saying. And when you have a startup, there aren't, you really have to do many roles, right? Because,
Yes.
and you have to be agile and flexible, and there's volatility in a startup. So that's a good experience for you later in your journey. And then you end up working in this telco kind of company, and even though, like you said, you walk into this room, you see these huge
Yes,
servers, and you're
it
supposed to
is.
manage them. And even though you don't have maybe a deep background on those huge servers, you thought, you know what, I could do this, right? And now that's your vision today. If you presented with a problem, even though you don't know a lot about that scenario and environment, you'll say, no, you know what, I'm going to go for it.
Yes.
And that's very entrepreneurial as well. Right?
Thanks, Stephen. So, I mean, I guess all my milestones are kind of like that because I've leapfrogged from one. I mean, I couldn't have gone linear, I think. So the next, how did I become an entrepreneur? I mean, while I was at the telco, I kind of felt there were boundaries, and I was looking after the servers which had the software. So I was very much involved with the software people, and the company decided to build the billing system from scratch. This was like a very unique situation. It's still operating in that telco. And I had a really great boss who was an architect, software architect. So I got exposed to software, Stephen, on that. And he welcomed me into the team. I was his hardware person, but welcomed me into the team on the business analysis and stuff like that. I got to know everybody in that company. And I got a flavor and a taste for software, giving solutions. And started talking to lots of people, lots of my friends. And that's how this Boston project came up. Somebody needed a local partner to set up the software for a Boston firm that was looking for SaaS when the word SaaS wasn't quite known, I think. it was a little ahead of its time, but so I again jumped at that. And of course, the environmental conditions kind of really busted us because all the contract, I mean, the dot-com bust happened, leaving quite a lot of dust out there. So as usual, I sort of scrambled again, focused for a little while internally because Sri Lanka has a stock exchange. So I kind of focused it back on that. And honestly, Stephen, now have two companies. So BoardPAC is really doing great globally. The starting point of this stock solution is actually the dominant player in Sri Lanka right now. I mean, if you're trading stocks in Sri Lanka, you'll be using my system. It's called ATRAD, and it's dominant. And I mean, other than BoardPAC, we are now taking it to India. It's in a couple of other countries, but we're taking it to India, which is again a leapfrog, Stephen, because everybody fears India being such a fast stock exchange. So this is kind of a challenge that I'd like to take in the next couple of years. So I'll pause there for a little.
Yeah, I find this really interesting. You start working on software. So you're working in this company, but you get exposed to everything, and you got to meet everybody, work with them, and there was an architect there, a software architect. So you learned all about that architecture side and on how that business process works on architecting that into software. But you also have a computing science background, so getting into software would be a natural. You got the necessary background to learn and to incorporate that, and that gave you a basis for starting these companies, and which are the top companies in your region, but also now growing rapidly throughout the world, and you've won many awards for these for the work you've done. So let's drill a little bit further into these two companies then. You founded these two companies with partners, or you founded it and then you brought on partners? And what was that entrepreneurial experience like with both of these companies when you first started to when you grow it to when you get go-to-market strategy and you're able to get some penetration? how much did you have to pivot or change as you're having these startups, and now you're prominent? Those are very prominent companies you have. So describe that entrepreneurial journey, because there's a lot of people out in my audience who are maybe thinking, gee, I want to start a company, and they have an idea, and they think, oh, I have an idea. I've got a great background. I'm going to go to an investor, and they're just going to give me money or something like that. They may think that way. You would have that experience of, you no doubt had to raise some funds as well, but build a team and go through some of those initial stages of a startup. What are elements of that journey? What are some lessons from that journey?
So absolutely, Stephen, I'd love to. So IronOne Technologies is the first company. So BoardPAC came subsequently. So IronOne is where we pivoted so much because, as I mentioned, the stock matter pivoted internally to Sri Lanka. So that product still continues. I started more products. We tried business intelligence. It was absolutely difficult to sell. It's still my pet product. I think one day I'll pick it up, but it's kind of not quite there. Then we started working with the telcos to find out what works for enterprise customers. Because I had come from an enterprise background. That was my comfort zone. So talking about a founder, I have a good friend called Sanji. He's based in Texas, Austin, Texas. So he's kind of, we tag team together, but he of course runs other companies, in other fields. So I'm the operational person. I'm the person who sort of is rolling up the sleeves and doing stuff here. So when it comes to IronOne, we pivoted a lot, tried all sorts of things because we couldn't, I just had to feel that we had the right thing to move ahead with. So we are very well known in Sri Lanka for enterprise software. We did lots of services, both in Sri Lanka and overseas. And overseas, we've had some really, not just enterprise, but we've had some really good projects, even from like Victoria's Secrets and Ralph Lauren and some good brands. But meanwhile, I was always searching for this product. So stumbled across BoardPAC, actually. And BoardPAC, we created as a company. So ATRAD, which was one of our original products, that too is a successful product that is taken overseas and growing. Those are pretty much the two main products that came out of this total pivoting this way, that way. And recently, I've sort of looked around and figured out we should start when I say recently, it's been 2 years really. We've started a artificial intelligence unit, doing some very, very interesting fintech projects right now. So these are the areas that sort of currently, as I'm talking to you today, these are the main focal areas that have emerged from the two companies, Stephen. And
right. So IronOne, so there are enterprise companies, and IronOne is in stocks and stock markets and so on. And that's the one that's going into India now, because India is such a big marketplace, right? So
yes.
Yeah, in fact, there's recent stories in the media about India, just growing so rapidly, and it's one of the biggest economies in the world. Will probably overtake Japan as well within the next, let's say 10 years, something like that. In terms of the economic size of India, and you're getting into India, is this because you have partners already in India, or how are you so if you have a company and you want to penetrate a marketplace, what's your strategy to do that?
So okay, my strategy may be a little different to lots of consultants probably say, and lots of consultants talk to us about these things earlier on. The confidence really came if you have, I believe if you have a product that you've crafted that has worked in some markets, like in our case, it started off in Sri Lanka. When we take it out to another market, so long as the product has similar elements, at least 80% that can work in another market, I didn't do market research, Stephen. everybody's talked about market research, but honestly, I mean, it's not that we don't do market research, but we don't do extensive market research. We kind of have a model now that we go out there and find partners. So in my case, the first country that we went with BoardPAC to was Malaysia. We were actually invited because there's a cross-sell. The Malaysian telco had invested in Sri Lanka's telco. And when I went for the Sri Lankan telco meeting, they invited me. So we went over just like that. I mean, obviously, even with the CEO's blessing, we have to work really hard and push at the second level and third level, because nobody really wants to start new partnerships at operational levels. And that was kind of a fun thing later that we talked about how much we pushed and pressured them to partner with BoardPAC. And today, in fact, the company name is Maxis, the telco. That's one of our best partners. And we've got from the stock exchange to the central bank to the top banks to pretty much any company that you would like to mention in Malaysia, they're using BoardPAC. I would say through the brand of the telco and the good work we've done on the product. And I mean, literally there's like zero churn. It's such a great, so that's my motto. So once we did it well in Malaysia, we ventured to South Africa, Vodafone. I mean, it's not that we only do partnerships. We set up officers now and set up, like if it's South Africa, we set up South Africans to sell for us. If it's Malaysia, we have Malaysians to sell for us. We find that using that nationality, they can talk the language, they understand. So of course, because of that model, we can't just do 60 countries. I'd love to do 60 countries. That's my goal, to cross the $1 billion mark, etc. But we have to be a little disciplined, I guess, and select priority countries, find good partners, as well as the position. But we do it ourselves, Stephen. I don't use consultants so far. So I just want to pause there for a little. That's a go-to-market strategy we have.
And BoardPAC is a company that has board automation software. So really any company
Yes.
could use the software. And you've expanded in different regions of the world. So I can see your go-to-market strategy. That's really interesting. You mentioned that you also have an interest in AI. And
Yes.
and you've already created an AI company, or you're about to create an AI company?
So the AI company is actually an offshoot within IronOne right now. It is likely that, like BoardPAC, it will become something of its own. It's in the transition now, because usually we incubate things in IronOne. And I mean, out of all the technologies, I feel that Sri Lanka has a lot of potential in building an AI like a brand, I think. And on top of it, what we thought is that we can attract the girls to come into AI, because it's statistical and it's not hardware oriented as such. So they would be more interested. So our target for this AI is to be 50-50 girls and boys, at least to start off with. So that divide of gender, whatever, is going to be taken away. So that's a goal that we're having internally, Stephen, for the AI.
So IronOne is the incubator for other companies, and BoardPAC came out of IronOne, and now you have an AI a group within IronOne, and you're thinking that'll become its own company as well. You've seen a lot of news now because of ChatGPT and generative AI using generative large transformer models that are pre-trained. You're seeing these fusion models that are used in creating graphics, and a lot of excitement. What are your views on generative AI, and are you incorporating some of that in your planning or not? Or
absolutely, Stephen. So all of the technologies that we are doing now, we are specifically looking at how to absorb generative AI into it. Because if you take the stock exchange, we already started many projects with the university, collaborated. it's an area, the fintech is an area that AI really can do something. So we've gone into ESG and carbon and looked at modeling on companies that are behaving more sustainably, as an example. So I mean, just talking about the India matter, one of the thoughts that I'm having is that we could make a really good impact on India. It's a large country which has an impact in the world. So if we advocate the masses to invest in the sustainable companies, and through AI, if we can identify these and sort of push them open to the retail market, we believe that we could make some serious impact to the world just by sort of creating that awareness as well as good information. So I mean, in terms of India, and also just to mention a question that you asked earlier, why India? Because India, again, just like Malaysia, we've got the stock exchange, we've got central bank, all of the top banks, and their boards using BoardPAC. So we have visibility with the decision makers of that country. No other product, I believe, has that access, Stephen. So I think that's an edge that we have. So with that, getting into the stock exchange and the broker firms is sort of a warm introduction. So I'm really looking forward to that. We're getting ready for the volumes. So
I mean, I can see now the advantage of you have one of the leading board software packages in the world for managing boards, and as a result, yes, you have relationships with board members and CEOs, and you are dominating in those areas. For example, in India, yes, you say you're dominating in those areas, and then that is a natural anchor, a base in which to propose other kinds of enterprise software that can help companies, right? So on the AI side, you've indicated that you can identify maybe these ESG. Does it create a dashboard where companies can help to make sure that they're more ESG compliant, or is it something that provides visibility of whether a company is adhering to ESG compliance for other people to look at? Is it a tool that a company can use to help with their ESG compliance and making sure that there's a term called greenwashing, so they're not greenwashing and so on?
So it's actually both, Stephen. So on one side, when it comes to BoardPAC, we are actually pulling up data from third-party solutions, because obviously the whole ESG and the carbon is a very complicated, wide system that is very industry-specific or company-specific. But we are pulling it out, simplifying it for the board members. So that's dashboarding. When it comes to ATRAD, for the stock market, that's more numeric. We are doing the rankings and things like that. We haven't started dashboarding for ATRAD yet, but that possibly could also start happening. But we're really sort of identifying and pulling up more sustainable companies and trying to be more accurate on it. Because as you know, the data is quite not so linear. There's a lot of information that is not public yet. So we're working through that, and believe that probably we would be one of the first to get this right, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely moving in the direction that the world is moving in. Mm-hmm. And so you won a number of awards. How did that come about? Just people nominating you, or what's that process like? I mean, you got a lot of recognition,
Yeah.
So
thank you, Stephen. So there's a lot of nominations. I believe, being from Asia initially, we get a lot of opportunities too. I believe that, and being a woman as well. So lots of nominations happen. So like, if women do well in this part of the world, they do get recognized, and that's a great thing. And I'm sort of honored or quite lucky to be that. So there were lots of awards like the SAARC Women Entrepreneur. So I won that. I mean, this was across many SAARC countries, and sort of surprised actually, but so happy. Of course, the Sri Lankan entrepreneurship, and one of the most interesting things or impactful things that happened for me was the Ernst & Young Winning Women sort of program that they had put up. So I won that in 2017, and we got incredible exposure. There were events in Palm Springs where we could meet all the growth companies that EY had as clientele, and all sorts of very famous people as well. So this really brought a lot of confidence for me, breaking through barriers, just like the Imperial College or schooling time. A little later, after being an entrepreneur, I honestly felt in power. I mean, like just because we were from Sri Lanka or Asia, it didn't matter. We had done great things, and that's carrying through.
I can see how you're correlating, or that sort of Imperial College where you're getting into all this diversity, and it opens your eyes, and it's a growth experience for you, because you're meeting people with different backgrounds and their points of view, and you think, wow, it's really interesting. I can learn from them as well. And then you got this Ernst & Young Winning Women recognition, and you're seeing the same thing. You indicate you're at Palm Springs, and there's people from different backgrounds, and you get to commune with them, and through that you're building your community, right? And those relationships are helpful because you can help each other. This SAARC award, can you define what that stands for, that SAARC term?
So that's SAARC is a I forget the actual acronym, but it's about 7 countries in Asia. So India, Nepal, Bangladesh. There's a couple of other countries, including Sri Lanka. So it's a woman entrepreneur award across all these 7 countries of the SAARC nations. So the inaugural one, I believe they held in Sri Lanka. They did the interviewing and all that earlier on. And it was all a surprise really on the day. And I was under a little bit of pressure because it was hosted in Sri Lanka, that particular event. And I really wanted to win in front of, all my colleagues. So that was great. And so it wasn't only for IT, it was for any industry. It was like open. Even the entrepreneurship award in Sri Lanka is open for all industries. So I felt a little responsibility that IT being such a good industry, when I was nominated, I felt I needed to win, for IT. So managed to do both of that.
Yeah, so the SAARC Women Entrepreneur of the Year Award, you won that in 2019, and that's across many countries.
Yes.
And you were the overall winner, which is a remarkable accomplishment. You've also won these Stevie International Business Awards, and you've got 4 key awards in leadership and innovation, and also the Women Leadership Award at Asia's IT Excellence Award. So can you describe what that's like, or what these awards are about?
So in fact, the Stevie Awards are quite interesting and quite special to us. So first we won an Asia Award. And I remember going to Hong Kong and picking it up with my COO. Again, it gave us confidence that we should just go for the global one. So the 4 or 5 awards that we won, I think most of them came to me as personal awards, in addition to the company achievements. So, it really sort of gave us confidence again, Stephen, that we could be in par with anybody really, because these are really international awards. So, it's really great to have won them. So Stevie is very well recognized in the forums of BoardPAC or board governance. I've seen Stevie Awards being sort of published by even NASDAQ as an example in their site, where they sort of put out their information about their board portal. So, I think we're right up there, with everybody after winning the series.
You're also part of the ICTA. So can you describe the ICTA? What is ICTA? What is its purpose?
So the ICTA, yes, Stephen.
Go ahead.
So the ICTA agency is a single agency that the government has installed to support the strategies of the country in terms of ICT. It was formed in the early 2000s in Sri Lanka. I believe every country sort of has some kind of agency of that nature. And so I've always been a part of it in a sense of voluntary contribution earlier, but I also took up the role in the board for a couple of years there and got privy to like a lot of information and all the challenges that ICT agency has when they have to run these things with the government. So it's sort of an agency that has been put up both for capacity building in terms of IT to be like a leading industry, as well as usage inside in terms of government usage, healthcare, and all these different organizations for productivity, like smart cities, so to say. The third prong is for entrepreneurship. So for the last, I would say almost 7 years, I've been very much involved in ICTA on the entrepreneurship side to try and encourage more women, as well as in general, because our company has done pretty well in the landscape of Sri Lanka in terms of product and the kind of clientele we have overseas. So we try to sort of encourage others just to be bold and go ahead and take their products out to international markets. And Stephen, I'm really glad to say that there are many. I mean, when we do evaluations of startup grants and things, there's many women startups, women founder startups, quite interesting ones. So it's quite encouraging, Stephen, to see this in Sri Lanka.
Again, I'm fascinated. You're also, so you're mentioning you're involved in judging startup programs in your region.
Yes.
Can you talk about that seed grant program that you're involved with as a judge?
Yes. So the ICTA for many years now has a grant program that it gives several grants, seed grants, to new startups that have potential to provide good services, productivity in Sri Lanka. The other option is they've tried to go global. So the criteria is very stringent. I'm one of, I think, seven judges. I mean, we've seen the quality of these companies improving year on year and becoming, and we've seen them growing as well. The ones we've given the grants to, so they get a basic grant first, but it's along with mentorship. And ICTA has a really good program and a very dedicated team that supports the mentorship, where they bring in, now actually even tomorrow I'm going in for a mentorship. So they bring us in, and we're very close to the ICTA's startup the ecosystem, that all of us are always volunteering and supporting it. So this grant pretty much for a year gives money, as well as once they get the ICTA, it's called spiralation actually. Once they get the spiralation, we see that the other agencies are giving them money for the next step, because there's some kind of endorsement. So it's one of the pioneering systems, Stephen.
That's interesting, and it contributes to the innovation entrepreneurship ecosystem. So you're involved in that. You're also involved with initiatives with SLASCOM, SEMA Global, the British Computer Society, yes, or BCS. Can you describe what you're doing with those organizations?
Yes, so all of them, I would say, goes under the umbrella of supporting entrepreneurship, and sometimes even just mentorship of students who have just come out and trying to find their way. Should they go become entrepreneur, or should they go into management, go that path? So just like me, there's a wide group of people. So the companies that you mentioned, organizations like SEMA, SLASCOM, CSSL, BCS, there's different programs. So time to time, the programs are different. But as an example, SLASCOM, we have this thing called PPC. It's a product council, product platform council. We're trying to advocate in Sri Lanka product builders. So us being a builder of multiple, like a serial entrepreneur building multiple products successfully, we share knowledge and also mentorship and literally give them confidence and some guidance to go ahead. So it's working out really well. And there's quite a large cohort of mentors as well as PPC companies membership. So that's SLASCOM, what I'm involved in. There's a whole lot that SLASCOM does, but this is what I'm passionate and involved in SLASCOM. When it comes to SEMA, it was a little different. It was a bunch of students who had just graduated from SEMA, who had to, it was almost 6 months. There were many sessions that we had to just interact with them and show them what it's like to be us, so that they learn different subjects of management or ethics or things like that. So it was very different. I too had to learn a bit, because sometimes we do things organically, and SEMA is an accounting certification organization. So they're a little theoretical as well. So I had to learn some theory because I came from engineering and we had skipped management. So everything I learned was, it was kind of funny, because when I learned the theory, I was like, oh, I'm already doing it. I just found it accidentally. So it was kind of fun as well, Stephen. So different organizations, but essentially helping our youth to, speed up really.
You're a very successful entrepreneur who also happens to be a woman, who has some of the most successful companies in your region, and also now ranked globally, like BoardPAC is ranked one of the top companies in the world now. In your, not just in your area, but just in all the things you're doing. What kind of recommendations would you give to the audience? Like, what are some lessons or tips? What can you describe, for example, some challenges you had, and then, or continue to have perhaps, and then how are you addressing them? What is the process? What are the skills? What are the tips you can provide to the audience that they could use based on your experience?
Yes, Stephen, thanks. So I think underlying, above everything, I think is about everything that is achieved is because of a challenge. If there was no challenge, I believe it's nothing. It's useless. So being ready to accept challenges as something interesting to solve, I guess, is the theme of everything. So when it comes to the company, there's like as you mentioned, everything is a challenge until you fix it. And then you have to go on to the next challenge. So that mindset of not fearing to take it on, even if you don't know the answer, possibly is what everything is about for me. Because honestly, when things are fixed, it becomes like, oh gosh, I have nothing to do. So what do I do? So I'm sure you know the feeling being an entrepreneur yourself. So I can't, I'm sure any entrepreneur, person who wants to be an entrepreneur knows exactly what I'm talking about. And a person who probably isn't an entrepreneur is like, she's crazy. So it's a distinct difference. But essentially, the problems we have when the company was small is different. As you mentioned, we have to do everything. We have to be the seller, we have to be the accounting guy, the tax filler, everything. So I remember like doing everything. And it's quite interesting because at one point, you have to, if you keep doing that, as an example, if you're the seller for too long, your company is not going to grow. So I tell the entrepreneurs that, I ask them, do you have a seller? Have you got your salesman? And they goes, no, I sell myself. And they're like really proudly saying it. And I can see myself in them because I used to do that initially until we got our sellers, and that's when we started growing. So things like that. So we have to delegate and focus on certain things and get other people to do things. So growing is all about that. And you may already know that we've got a CEO for BoardPAC. So BoardPAC is kind of my baby, and it took me a while to sort of let go, in a sense. And I think that's the best thing I've done, because I can see that David, who's my CEO for BoardPAC, he's doing a tremendous job, and I can focus on a lot more things and support him. So that's kind of, I guess, my advice. So you have to, as the company grows, you have to start changing your CEO or whatever founder role. Otherwise, you're going to get stuck with some tiny little company like for 100 years. So I pause there, I guess.
Yeah, so those are very good lessons, and I can see this aspect of you throughout the entire interview here, where you're always looking for that challenge, the stretch goals, right? Where you're feeling stretched and you're not necessarily know how to do something, but you take it on as a challenge and you acquire the skills to, excuse me, to overcome that challenge and to address it. So, and I find that's common among entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs. You have to embrace challenge, not be afraid of it, and just go for it, right?
Yes.
And in fact, I was at a board meeting this past week, and I was remarking to somebody that who's embarking on a new journey of changing an organization, and I said, there's going to be more reasons not to do it than to do it.
Yes.
And that's always the case when you're breaking new ground, right? And you got to go through that. You got to break through that and not let that stop you. So, but that's a particular mindset required to be successful. And you clearly exhibit all of this, all of these qualities of success for entrepreneur. And I encourage you,
craziness.
Yeah, and then,
I mean,
go ahead.
Honestly, so sometimes, I mean, there are times when it's really tough. You think, I mean, I got to be crazy to keep doing this, but then, like, you wake up the next day and it's all gone. You just, it's sort of.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate because I'm entrepreneurial too. So
exactly.
But it's not everybody has that mindset, right? So
it is hard.
yeah, it can be hard. Now, let's see here. We're at the end of our interview. Are there any other recommendations you want to give to the audience? Tips, lessons, and so on. So you've given a lot of tips just based on your experiences throughout this chat. Are there any other lasting recommendations you want to give to the audience? And that's the last one.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to share something from a perspective of, a company that has been started in Asia, in a smaller country in Asia. So I sort of believe that it doesn't matter where you are. The world is kind of global now. And sometimes I do hear this coming from a smaller country, that we think that we have to go with smaller steps. I mean, I honestly don't. It's not that I've been successful every time I've crashed, landed too, but it's still worth it, because after, sometimes you do 3 things and 1 comes right. So we just go out there and do the biggest thing we can. And that's sort of my thing. And some of them work out and it's worth it, right? Rather than going slow. So it's one of the, I don't know whether it's a good advice or bad, but it's something I do and it's worked for me. And I'd like to share that with especially Asians who get advised not to do things fast. So that's a parting word from me.
I mean, I understand what you're saying too, and it's true. I think some people, if they come from not from America or something like that, or some of the countries in Europe, they may think, well, how am I going to grow big? And you're just saying, don't worry about it, just go for it, right?
Yes,
And
exactly.
Yeah, and you're doing it. You have some of the biggest or most successful companies that you created, and they're continuing to expand, and you're growing, and it's just remarkable all that you're accomplishing and continue to accomplish. Maybe I'll ask one more question, and that this will be the final one. What are your ultimate personal goals? So you got these impact goals that you have within your community to help on entrepreneurship, to encourage diverse populations to get involved in innovation, entrepreneurship, and so on. So you're doing law for social impact, and you have these companies which are growing in a remarkable way, ranked in the top in terms of solutions that you're offering. How about your personal journey? Where do you want to see yourself in, let's say, 10 years?
So that's actually a really tough question, because it keeps shifting, Stephen. So right now, up to now, I was thinking that through the work I do, if I can make like a big impact, so I'm thinking like the India impact, or even BoardPAC itself for carbon and ESG, because of the visibility of the top level people, that we could really be a driver for carbon and ESG. Just BoardPAC can be a driver, because I'm just thinking, because we have access to keep the powerful people in each country aware and drive them. So that has been I would say my prior goal, or up to now. I'm still searching, because I feel it's not the ultimate one. So I'm in a phase right now to figure this out. So I don't have the answer today, but if I talk to you maybe like in a year, I will know this. And this is my constant journey, because I keep changing my goal, so to say. Because what I just said about the ESG and the carbon, I think we can do it. It's already sort of happening. We're putting a lot of it in. The challenge is not big anymore, so to say. So I hope that makes. I just want to do like an impact that would be like globally impactful, Stephen. And I'm still searching. So
just before we started our chat, we had a brief pre-chat, right? And we mentioned some people we know in common who belong to YPO. Do you belong to the Young Presidents Organization?
I actually do not. I haven't joined it. I've been so absorbed with the companies that I haven't really joined a lot of things. I've been in a few things like ICTA and things like that, but probably something I will look into. I have heard of it quite a bit.
It's interesting. There is one chapter within YPO, and they're looking for women who have these big visions and who are very successful and so on. You'd be such a perfect fit. So maybe after the chat, I'll describe this in more detail, and then if you wish, sure, I'll do an introduction. And it's a virtual chapter, which means that
that'll help.
It's global. But everybody within that chapter are change makers like yourself, just really remarkable people. And I think you would find the experience quite rewarding. And you definitely, in my opinion, you would qualify. Now, I should clarify to the audience, I'm not a member of YPO. It's just that I've been supporting them for so many years. Yes. A number of years ago, they asked for some help. So I've been supporting them pro bono, by the way.
Thank you, Steve.
I've made friends within the community. And from what I understand, you'd be such a perfect fit for this particular chapter, and especially because the way your vision goes. But anyways, just a real pleasure to spend this time with you. You are outstanding. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Stephen. I mean, really, likewise. I really enjoyed the chat, and the questions were like amazing. So thank you so much.
Okay, and take care.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.